WandaVision episode 6, all new spooky spectacular. So I was trying to find like a random item for this being the Halloween episode, and I was like, oh, my award for best Halloween costume from 2 years ago, I guess now, thanks to Virus. Back to the Future, Marty McFly. That's all I got. Sorry that this review is a week late for like the two people that actually care to watch mine. I'm excited for next week's episode because this one ended, or well, I guess tomorrow's episode now. Because this was crazy. This is a crazy episode. Once again, like they've been doing the past couple of weeks, couple of answers, sort of, and then a trillion questions because there are things that happen in this that they don't really put any focus on, but they force me to ask a bunch of questions. For instance, the main thing that came to mind. So, of course, there's been all the theories. Who is Agnes? What's going on with Quicksilver? Is Quicksilver someone else? Is Agnes her own person? Or is, a lot of people just assume that she was a character from the comics. And in this episode, I was kind of like, what if that was just to kind of throw things off? What if, obviously she knows something. Her and Herb, because Herb actually has a moment in this episode with Wanda, they both obviously have a little bit of, autonomy. We see that way more with Agnes because Herb has only shown up, in 3 episodes so far. So we see it a lot more with Agnes, but obviously Herb is one of the other people. So that would be, 3 separate characters, counting Quicksilver, because he comes into this episode this week. And first off, I do have to mention Malcolm in the Middle. That was a great opening. I thought it was super cool. But he comes into this episode and he's just like, yeah, I know you're doing this. I know this is happening and I died, but I'm here. And what are you doing? How is this going on? I know your husband is dead. I should know that because, I'm dead. But your dead husband can't die twice. He was saying all sorts of crazy things where I'm like, So even as a character that's just poof, I'm brought back to life, there's obviously something happening here. So I don't think that, it still could, in a sense, be the version, the MCU, or not MCU, but the X-Men movie version of Pietro. And eventually, once all this is said and done, they'll kind of do it and be like, oh, it is him. I was talking to a buddy of mine at work today. We also talked about how it could still be the actor and it could still be Quicksilver, but what if they just pulled a third universe and it was we have our MCU, we have our Fox universe, and then they're like, well, we kind of like the Fox universe version of Quicksilver, but why don't we just pull him from another universe where he's basically the version we've seen in the Fox movies, but we'll just write, they can make up whatever story they want to once he's back to normal or, stuff like that. So we were talking, maybe that could happen. Maybe this could just be a reference. A lot of people have mentioned that maybe he's just there to psych us out and it's just the villain and it's just, a cool nod to be like, we own Fox now, and that's pretty much it. I hope that's not the case. I think I mentioned that when he first showed up. I hope that's not what they're doing because I feel like that's kind of dumb, and mostly just due to the fact that there are a million other ways to do it, but this is just fun and easy, especially with them already going into the multiverse. It's like, why do this why make it just a nod when you're already, the next step is clearly the multiverse going into Doctor Strange? Why make this just a weird nod just because? So I feel like it's not that, and I'm hoping it's not that because I would love for them to already be like, yep, we're introducing mutants. But he has autonomy, he's asking a bunch of weird questions, and with Agnes, we saw her in this episode. Obviously, Vision is doing his thing where he ends up going to the outskirts of the town. He goes to what I believe was Ellis Road, if I'm not mistaken. And so he's going throughout the episode. He lies to Wanda, says oh, I'm doing neighborhood watch. And she's like, oh, you weren't supposed to do that. But she's trying not to have the giant argument again. And obviously, he's not being controlled. The first thing he said when he came down dressed as himself, which was super cool, he came down and was like, oh, there was nothing else in the closet for me to wear. And so clearly he was pissed off. And then he just went into it, was like, oh, but, hey, whatever. And so he said his little thing. And she's like, you're not supposed to. He's like, not supposed to what? And it's like, yeah, that's what I thought. I'm going to do something else. So he takes off. Pietro, helps out with the kids. And so he ends up finding himself at the last street that Wanda mentions later in the episode. And we find Agnes. And so a million questions came up for me because I'm like, okay, whole series, everyone's been like, well, she says a bunch of weird stuff. Her husband Ralph, is that, Mephisto, is that Nightmare, whatever comic book character villain that you want to insert? Or is that just a random little nod? It was either her anniversary or her birthday or something was, referenced to be like the Salem witch trials and stuff like that. So a million little references, like she can do this. Maybe she's the one that killed the dog. Maybe she's trying to force the kids to grow up and stuff, so many things. She asked Wanda oh, you know how to bring people back? my buddy at work today was like, I think she was faking that. And he thought she was faking in the car today as well. Like, she knew what she was doing. She was just kind of doing that to kind of push Vision to go outside of the wall to explore some more. Like, he was at that final edge, and he thought that she was faking. And I was like, I don't think she was faking. And that's why it brought up a million questions, because I'm like, all right, she has autonomy. We've seen that before. She's broken character in the the scene. So we know that she has an extra little layer to what she can do compared to other characters within the show. And yet somehow in this episode she was at the very edge of town, clearly doing something else. And yet she also ended up being kind of frozen in place like a lot of the other characters, which she could have known that Vision was exploring, and she's like, okay, well, I'll make my way out here. But I was like, it just didn't seem like she was faking to me. And granted, that's what a faker would do, is just be a good actor. So who the F knows? But I was like, it just brought up so many questions for me. Like, why was she out there? What was she doing that she went to the edge of town? Maybe there was some part of, and this is kind of why I wonder if maybe whatever was going on with Agnes was like our big bad villain, and they're like, oh, I need a more direct approach, and that's how we got Quicksilver. And because they did that, they jumped out of Agnes's body, and then she had like a moment of freedom where she was like, I need to get the F out of here, and she was almost there, but then she kind of just froze, and she was kind of taken over by the whole magic of like the TV show. That's kind of my mini random theory. Whatever was controlling her, if she's being controlled, left her and just basically was like, I'm just going to become her brother. I'm going to become Wanda's brother, and then just try to see like, what does she know? What does she understand that I'm doing? What does she not understand that I'm doing? And it was just interesting because I'm like, she was at the edge of town. There had to be a reason for that. Yet she ended up frozen right at the edge. So it's just interesting. Like, there's just so many things that where it was just like, why was she at the edge of town? How did she end up being frozen? Of course, when she's brought out of it, she's like, oh, like your vision and all this stuff. And that's what my friend said. He believes that Agnes was faking, because when Vision, I think the guy's name is Norm, his coworker, when he brought him out, he flipped out and he said, she's in my head. And a lot of people have brought this up. He doesn't specifically say Wanda, but Agnes does. And so my buddy was like, I think she's faking because, of course, she's working with Wanda. So he just says, oh, it's Wanda doing it because she knows that Vision has kind of been, it's kind of stepping out of bounds of like the script of the TV show. So she was just like, oh man, it's totally Wanda. You got to help us. But Vision doesn't know who the Avengers are, which is interesting. And I don't know. Like, I know I threw that out there. We'll find out. Well, who knows what that we're going to have tomorrow. But like, it's so hard to have theories on this show sometimes where it's like, I want to have this theory, and then I want to have that theory, and then this random thing happens where I'm like, all I keep thinking the whole episode, that's the question I had. Why was she at the edge of town? That was the one thing that got me so bad in this whole episode, despite the Quicksilver stuff, which I think we'll get a definitive answer on, and I'm sure we will with Agnes too. But it was just like, why was she at the edge of town? And what happened that made her go all the way there, yet somehow she suddenly froze? Of all the characters, she always takes a break. She's always the person that's like, oh, well, I can do this extra little thing, or I'm involved in this way or that way. And it's weird that, for one, like I said, she's at the edge of town, and two, she was frozen just like everyone else. So she still needs to be close to Wanda to kind of function. And so, once again, it just brings up so many questions. Like, I thought she had complete autonomy, which she still kind of does, because, once again, she was at the edge of town. Very suspicious. But that just is what it is, like most of the things in this freaking show, because who the F knows what we're going to get in the next 3 episodes. But that was the big question for me personally. Why was Agnes at the edge of town? And how come she made it there, but then she ended up freezing like a lot of the other people? So I thought that was a great moment. And then, of course, Vision steps outside of the boundary, and then he starts falling apart and everything. The kids end up both having powers, so I think Speed and Wiccan are their names. So, of course, we see, Uncle Quicksilver, he's taking them around there, spraying people and stuff, and, throwing toilet paper on everybody at super speed in the beginning of the day. That I do believe comes after a really cool Kick-Ass reference, because they reference Kick-Ass because Evan Peters and Aaron something. I was it Aaron Johnson? I don't remember his last name, but both Quicksilvers were in Kick-Ass, so I was like, oh, that's a funny little reference that they had there. But the kids have their powers. He's asking a bunch of questions, and then when we get to the end where Vision ends up, taking a step outside of the boundaries, and he's like, they need help. Like, you need to help these people. That's when Wiccan is like, Dad's in trouble. And then we have the end of this episode, which is just insanely ridiculous. After all the madness we've gone through, Hayward's being a douchebag and just like a generic villain, which is super boring. It's honestly like the worst part of like the whole show right now is like, why is he just like the random douchebag villain? Even when he shot the drone, they didn't have to do that. If they wanted, the exact same episode could have played out without him doing that. Like, Wanda could have been like, I don't like this drone. They didn't even have to shoot. Just her seeing the drone could have been the final straw. Like, oh, they kind of figured out another tactic to get into the bubble without losing communication, with their tech. I don't like that. So I'm just going to go talk to them and say, leave me alone. They could have easily done that exact same episode without him shooting the drone strike. And then, of course, that leads to the little argument he has. And it's like, oh, who's this, the sassy best friend? And then he kicks out Wu, Monica, and Kat Dennings. I swear I can't remember her character's name. And so he kicks them out. They end up fighting back. They knock out a couple people. They're going to meet whoever this big freaking reference is. Like, my aerospace engineer buddy. So maybe in the next episode, that's when we're going to get it. But they've dropped that like 3 or 4 times, it feels like. And I'm like, a new character, like, I assume it's going to be a new character. But new character that we don't know. New character we're expecting. Because it's like that freaking Fantastic Four thing. Everybody's like, are they going to scratch that itch, or is that just a thing? Even the astronaut stuff that could be them. Aerospace thing could be somebody else. So who knows what's going to happen there. But I don't know. I don't know. It's just very interesting to see how that's going to play, especially when they escape. So we have, I believe, 5 characters, because of course, I wish I could remember her name. I really do. But Kat Dennings' character, she gets captured, of course, because she's like, oh, I'm going to stay behind because somebody has to do the hacking thing. So she's trying to find some extra information. They reference that Monica, her molecular structure has changed. So I don't know if that's going to lead to the mutant thing. They could change the definition because technically as a mutant, you have to be born with those powers. They could change it for the movies just to be like, whatever. So who knows if that's going to matter or not. But Kat Dennings ends up being arrested. And so she gets caught in the wave at the end of the episode. They don't show what she turns into. All the cops turn into clowns and everything. So we'll see what happens with her character. We have Hayward and the 2 random people who don't actually matter, just the driver and the other person. The 3 of them escape. And then, of course, we have Wu and Monica escaping as well. And the episode just ends. It's like the Expanse. I shouldn't call it the Expanse, but the Hex. It just blows out. And so it seems like it goes incredibly far. And we only see it from the perspective of, oh, well, she, of course, caught everyone, from S.W.O.R.D. She, like, caught all of them in the whole base and everything. But it also goes, like, they call it a hex, but it's a big circle. So it goes 360. Like, we haven't seen what's on the other side, of this town either. So, obviously, Ellis Road or, whatever it's called, that ends up going directly towards S.W.O.R.D., but we don't see what's on the other side of Eastview. So there could be other people there that end up being captured. I doubt they'll kind of do that with 3 episodes left, because that would be introducing a ton of extra stuff. But it does expand fairly far, and we could see it expand even further. And that's probably what could lead into the Multiverse of Madness, which is something else my buddy mentioned. Like, what if it just kept going and it goes all the way to New York? And I was like, it is set in New Jersey. And it was like, that could happen. I don't know if that'll be a part of the reveal, if they'll keep her as a full-on villain, which a lot of people have wondered. So there's definitely that giant question there, and it's like, I don't really know what to expect. Of course, 3 episodes left. I'm excited. But there's just so much to wonder about. So I would love to know your thoughts on this episode. It was insane. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what the F to think about Quicksilver. I'm like, there's so many entities and stuff where I'm like, I think he's somebody for sure. Agnes seems to be her own thing, but then somehow she seemed to lose control, at the edge of town as well. So she doesn't have as much power. Maybe she's helping. Who knows what Herb's deal is? Maybe they're both in that same realm where they're both trying to help Wanda out. And then there's a third party who could be, everyone's mentioned Mephisto or Nightmare. That could be the main villain. And then these other characters are just other magic people trying to help Wanda. For whatever reason, are they trying to get the kids? Are they trying to get, the Vision's Mind Stone? Because technically that shouldn't exist anymore, but he has it. So it's like, are they trying to find a way to make the children real? Are they trying to find a way to make the stone real? There are still a lot of questions, and there still seem to be a lot of random parties at play here that and technically we only know Wanda. Like, I just want my family. And then there's other people who's like, what are you doing? Who are you? And what do you want? So I don't know. There are a lot of questions, but I'm enjoying the show. I'm glad I'm, going to be watching it tomorrow. Once again, sorry this review is super late, but I would love to know your thoughts. Theories, new theories, old theories. What was debunked? What was proven for you? What have you gotten right? What have you gotten wrong? Would love to know your thoughts on everything as a whole, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.